Have you forgotten how to do this?
It's just a new room. It's throwing me off. I don't know how to.
It's the same computer.
Welcome to Drum and Drummer, a podcast focused on drums, drumming and drummers. I'm George Pickering and that's Ben Winty, and we are both professional drummers in this business we call music. So stick around and join us as we pass the time whilst trying to stay in time.
But it's a bit of a, not a gamble, but it's like buying new pants, isn't it? Once you try them on, you can't resell them. Willkommen! Yo!
Hello.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I'm not replying in German because you said "Willkommen" and then said "yo," and half German, half English.
Yeah.
Is yo? I'd say yo's an American slang.
Sure. Yeah. We'll go with that. Anyway, welcome to Drum and Drummer.
Oh, what?
George
now I'm
is
weird
with me.
for focusing on yo. You said it.
Oh, I know, but I say a lot of things.
You do say a lot of things.
Do I regret
why
them?
we had to do a podcast.
Yeah.
Today we got a guest.
Big
I'm going to go into
time.
that. No chit chat, because I'm going to talk about how we met. Because I briefly said it to him, but I think it's worth addressing. Our guest today, I met him in, I want to say March or April last year, and it's taken 18 months to have him on. But we finally secured a date. We almost had to do it when he wasn't on tour. As you'll find out, he's a very busy
Always
man.
on tour. Yeah.
Always on tour. So, but I will say it because I think I said it to you. When I worked with him, he's the Bastille drum tech, by the way. I made a conscious effort to actually work hard that time. It wasn't like I didn't work hard at the crew job.
Yeah.
But I did. My God, see some of the slackers they had there. I got stuck in because I was like, he could be great for the pod. And at the end, I remember this. He was like, "Cheers, mate." That was because it was basically me and him did the whole
Didn't learn your
loadout.
name. Yeah.
He was like, "Cheers, George Pickering of Drum and Drummer." That was brilliant. No, he didn't say that was brilliant, but he was like, "Great loadout." And I was like, "Hey, if it was great, do you want to be on the pod?" And I gave him a piece of paper, just said my name and Drum and Drummer podcast. And then a year and a half later, here we are. So that's the backstory to that, because, I'm out there, Ben. I'm out there. I'm finding these people.
Yeah.
I'll just text you at 2 a.m. and be like, "Found a guest." It's you don't know him. He's not even a drummer, but just down pubs. So you're like, "Hey, I got someone for the pod."
You're out there networking. It's good.
Thankfully, this person was a drummer, so and a drum tech, and has a lot to tell. So yeah.
And obviously, since you met Ollie, we have actually had Woody, who he texts for, on the podcast. If you haven't listened to that, go back and find it.
Which one would you suggest listening to first? I mean, if you're here, keep listening.
Episode 1, keep working your way through all 100, and then you'll be up to date with the overarching plot of this series.
It only makes sense if you listen to all of them, though.
Yeah.
And subscribe and rate us.
Yeah.
5 stars.
Because there's a secret clue in each episode which will eventually leads to a pot of buried treasure, which I've hidden somewhere in Hillsey.
Should we just go with it?
Yeah, let's go in. Yeah.
Here's Ollie. Thanks for finally doing this. I mean,
sorry it's taken so long.
Well, I'm just going to go straight in with how we met. Do you like the term drum tech? I never know which word to use.
Yeah, drum tech's good.
Drum tech. Let's go with drum tech. Drum tech for Bastille. And I did a crew job for a few months, working at the Brighton Centre. And I met Ollie, and who is our guest today. And I'd worked. I hadn't done many shifts at that point, but I was like, "Oh, this guy's cool." Because sometimes you don't know who you're going to be working with.
That's right.
Food crews, and but I was like, "Oh no, he's cool." And I remember like actually trying to work hard that day. I was like, "Right, I'm going to check so I can get him on the pod." And that was March 2022. Was it? No.
Yes.
Last
it would have
year.
been. It would have been. Yeah, that's right.
But so anyway, I remember packing down the kit like super quick, thinking like, I've got to impress this guy, and then gave you a card and was like, "Do you want to be on the pod?" You're like, "Yeah."
Yeah, no, it was a good show. I liked it.
I don't know where to begin because there's a lot we could ask. I mean, let's start with the Bastille gig.
Yes.
I mean, let's start with how that came about.
It came about in about 2015, and I hadn't done a gig of that size before as a drum tech. In fact, I remember getting the call about Bastille. I'd woken up I was driving this splitter van that I owned with 6 bunks in the back. And I was in a Tesco car park in Bristol with 6 sweaty metalers in the back of my van that we were on tour with. And it was 8 o'clock in the morning. We woke up in the car park because that's where we parked overnight. And I got a text about, would I be interested in being drum tech for Bastille? And obviously I jumped at the chance. But I had my son who was on the way at that point. So I said to the guy, I'll do the first sort of 6-week summer festival season, and then I'm going to have to jump off because my son's being born. And I'm still doing it 9 years later.
Wow. So was there a reason you stayed with it? Where, you know?
Well, yeah, I was very lucky to have that gig, really.
Yeah.
Like I said, I hadn't done anything at that level before. The size of the festivals they were doing, or the size of the band they were, or the size of the production. And I actually think, and I've said this a million times, so it was the production manager. It was an old, I toured with him. He was an old friend of mine, basically. And I'm 99% sure that he just used up his entire list of contacts, and there's just me at the bottom. And he took a chance on me because I hadn't done anything like that before, really.
So what had you done before? Had you done drum teching of any level?
To a degree, yeah. I was a drummer, basically. I was a drummer for 15 years. And there was a couple of drum tech gigs I've been sent out on with our management company, for example, who had other acts that needed roadies. So they would send us out to do that. So that was the level of drum teching I'd done just for mates, really. But obviously I'd done it for myself, and I knew how to tune a kit.
Yeah.
And I'd been on the road for long enough, so I had some road experience. But by the time Bastille had started, I hadn't been drumming for a couple of years. The band I was in had finished. And I was being a driver, like a roadie, driving people around in my van, basically.
Yeah, fair enough. I want to talk through a typical day, because for me, when I did that job, it was like I loaded in the stuff and then you came along and set up the kit. I mean, let's start with from the bus, getting off. I just find this fascinating, the life of everyone involved in the show. What's your typical day?
So my day starts a little later than, let's say, the stage manager or the set carpenters, because they got to get in first and build the stuff that my drum kit goes on, if you like. So they've got to build the stage, all the risers on the stage. They've got to hang the lights, get them all of the way. So I'll roll in about 10 o'clock, and that stuff would have been worked on for a good 3 hours already.
Yeah.
So by the time I roll in, I find the backline truck, and there'll be people like you, maybe 15 of the local crew guys, to help throw the stuff out of the truck, down the ramp and into the venue. And then I would find 2 or 3 guys to give me a hand hoiking all the stuff out of the cases, and I'd build a drum kit, and that would take anywhere from 45 minutes to hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on a number of different things, how close I can get the trunks to the stage, or trunks to my riser, whether we've got to walk it in from the street, empty them out there and walk it in, or whether I can roll the cases straight up onto the stage next to the riser and I'm straight out then. So there's always loads of different variables. Then the audio team will arrive and they'll build their world, and then they'll start cabling up and miking up the stage. And then about 2 or 3 hours after we've tipped the backline truck, we'll do a line check, basically making sure everything is working as it was yesterday.
Yeah.
If it isn't, find out why. And if it is, then hooray. And that's us just making sure that all our stuff is cabled up properly. It's all going through the desks properly, coming out the PA properly, all making the right noises. And then we'll chill out and wait for the band, and they'll sound check about 3 or 4 p.m. And that's them making sure that they can hear everything right. It's making sure that the front of house guy can hear everything right and mix the show, really, basically build a mix for the gig. And then they'll play a couple of songs. Sometimes they'll do a sound check party, where a little mini gig for people.
Yeah. Then, I think that happened when I did the Brighton gig. I could be wrong. I feel like I'd never seen one of them before.
What, a sound check party?
Yeah, sound check party. What?
Yes,
what is that?
It's a VIP experience. It's an add-on to your ticket. and they will come in and the band will play 3 songs for them in a intimate setting with just them and those guys that have bought that ticket for that, and then they'll do about 45 minutes of question and answers.
Oh wow!
Where the fans will ask anything from intimate details to what's your favorite gig.
Yeah.
What's the weirdest? Has there been are you present for that?
Sometimes.
Sometimes,
but normally actually that's a part of the day where actually I'm not needed because the drums aren't being played, and I can actually just find that's probably when I go and get dinner.
Just wondering if you had an idea what the weirdest question was that had been asked at one of those things.
They ask all sorts. They ask about tattoos. They ask about favorite gigs. Who's come the furthest? Nothing's springing to mind about the oddest question, but I'm sure there's been some. I'm sure
I was
there's been
expecting you to say, I can't say. I no, I can't think. Yeah, no, I do remember that. I remember, there was I think I just finished, loading in stuff, and then some families came in.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because that would have been, it would have been Brighton. So the drummer lives down there.
Yeah, of course.
And actually, they had invited the drummer's son's school class to come along to that one. Yeah, Woody's got 2 kids down in Brighton, and I think if I remember correctly, they'd invited his son's school class to come along to the sound check.
That's a good school trip, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good school trip.
Yeah. Better than Butser Hill, where we used to go.
Yeah. What does your dad do? This.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
So after the sound check party, go and get dinner and wait until
that's it then. That's it. By that point, for me, the band have played some songs. Nothing's fallen over, hopefully. And then that's as good as show ready. So from that point on, we all relax. And then about half an hour before the show, depending if there's a support band, we get them on. And then when they get off, we have a half an hour period of time where we basically redo our line check that we did earlier in the day. And we just recheck and remake sure everything else works again properly. If we've had to use some of our stuff for the support act, then there's a case of plugging all that back in. And then obviously making sure it works still. And then, show ready, waiting for the band.
Nice. When the show's going on, how present are you?
I am, if I've done my job properly in the day, I am not needed.
Right.
That's not strictly true. The point is, I'm only needed if the drums fall over or something breaks or, something stops working as it should, at which point I'll run on, assess the problem and fix it. Yeah. But in theory, what I always like to say is you shouldn't see me on stage if everything I've done in the day, because as a drum tech versus say like a guitar tech will be busy all through the show, tuning guitars, guitar changes, getting the next guitar ready for the next song. And he's very busy, but me, it's all in the prep. It's all in, have I set it up properly? Have I made sure everything's tight? The cymbal's not going to fall down, or the mic stand's not going to fall down, or none of the mics are going to droop. The drums should be tuned all right, and with a bit of luck, they'll stay tuned.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I can hear a ring developing on the snare drum, and I'll just go and tweak it.
Yeah.
There's been a few occasions where, a drum head's broken, or the bottom snare head's gone, and at which point I'll run on with the spare snare and just swap it over. But no, in theory, I shouldn't really be very present during the gig.
No.
I know some drum techs that sit like right by the drummer and they're always looking at each other. I stay off stage. They don't need me up there. And then, I've got eye contact with Woody the whole time. He's got a shout mic, so he can press a button and talk directly to me. But then, there are some points when.
Is that something that's developed over time? When you started the gig, were you a bit more like, oh my God, I've got to be here just in case something happens, and then not relax, but learn?
Yeah, no, definitely. But Woody will still come and check his kit over every time I've built it, even 9 years on. What happens? So at the beginning, he would come, he'd tweak this, he'd tweak that, and then, make sure everything's fine, hit it a few times, like, yeah, okay, well done, no thanks. But now he'll come up and he'll go, yep, and he'll leave. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But he has to come and do it for his own peace of mind.
Yeah, of course. That'd be wild if the first time was just
Well, yeah, I mean, every now and then it happens where he's arrived late and he just has to get up. But, you know, we've worked on the system for so long now that I think he could probably manage to come up and play the gig without having checked his kit. But he wants to make sure it's done, which is absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Over the 9 years you've been doing it, has there been any sort of significant changes with his setup at all or with his kit?
Absolutely. If you imagine that he used to have to set it up himself, and then now there's some guy to do it for him, it got very big. Big stuff added, stuff grew, extra cymbals arrived, started showing up. But the biggest change has been how they, Woody's got an electric setup sort of built into his acoustic kit, if you like. So we've got, we had an SPDS over to our left. We had some triggers. We had an extra couple of pedals, which was all going through the SPDS to make different sounds. And there's a kicks trigger and a snare trigger, which would have the samples from the record. So when he's hitting the snare, for example, at the end of Pompeii, you've got the actual Pompeii sound from the record being triggered from the trigger and the SPDS, and then it'd be augmented with his real snare sound in the room. That's developed quite significantly over the last 2 years specifically, because as they were getting used to this idea of having the real sounds from the record playing off these triggers, they started, one of the albums they wrote was very electronic sound based. So what they found is actually with the acoustic kit, it's not sounding like they wanted to. So these need for electric sounds and more triggers just grew as their music developed, basically. So there was more triggers being involved, some more like electric pads being involved across the kit. So instead of I don't want that tom sound, I want an electronic tom sound. So they'd be mounted off different pads around the kit, if you like. And then the last 2 years with the newest record, we've developed that, or say we, not me, it's been developed to another degree where they run all these sounds through Ableton. So we've got rid of the SPDS now, and we have 6 pads mounted to Woody's left, kick and a snare trigger, 2 pads mounted to Woody's right, and then 2 electronic kick triggers. So essentially he can play an entire electric kit on an entire song using these electric sounds without touching his acoustic kit, if that song requires it. And all these sounds go through a Roland TM6 module, which then goes off to a laptop, which is running software called Ableton, which you can assign all of these pads to a different sound within Ableton, and then you can automate those sounds so they can change within the song. So essentially, those 6 pads can be made to sound like whatever you want, whether it's like a snare drum or a cow mooing or whatever you want it to sound like, it can be achieved within Ableton. And then Ableton runs alongside the song, and the sounds and the pads the sounds make, or the sounds the pads make, change as the song goes on.
Because I know George is delving into that world himself, learning about that. It's something I've not. I'm a studio engineer, so Pro Tools is my thing.
Yeah.
So I've never used anything like that live. But when you're saying about, so let's say you just have a pad and it's one sound for song A and one sound for song B, or can it change mid-song?
Yes. Yeah. So essentially what you've got is, so, you know, your Pro Tools marker will run along the song from start to finish. Well, essentially Ableton does exactly that. And then you can go in and say, at this point, it runs with MIDI notes. So each pad that Woody has is assigned to a MIDI note, which is essentially the 8 octaves on a piano, but in a MIDI form, if that makes sense. They've all got a code. And you can then, so this pad will be assigned to this MIDI note, which I've told Ableton to make this noise. Yeah. Right. And then somewhere through the song, I will automate that. So it now moves to this MIDI note, which makes a different sound. Yeah. So it's kind of moving through the MIDI notes, pre-designed. It takes hours and hours to go into the song at that level. There's a fellow called Joe Clegg who has kind of pioneered this system, and he will just lose days and days and days.
Yeah, we just went to the UK drum show, and Joe was there, and
That's
George has been getting into this through Joe and
Oh,
met
fantastic.
Joe, and
Well, yeah,
hopefully
'cause-
he's going to come on the show and really talk about.
Oh,
that
he
side of
should,
things.
because he's an
Yeah.
absolute genius. He really is. When we were building all this for Bastille, I didn't have a clue what it was all about, and I only have a tiny, limited knowledge of it now. But I spent 2 weeks up at Joe's studio with the Bastille guitar tech, because they were doing the same through sort of Kempers, and the keyboards were doing the same thing as well. So we spent a couple of weeks up there, and Joe was just really, really kind and gentle, and took us all through it and explained what he was doing. But he's also done a series, like a video tutorial on what he's doing.
Yeah. Well, this is
I
the
mean,
thing, Joe. I mean, because I was getting into Ableton, and everyone I spoke to, he said, "Oh, Joe Clegg, he's the guy," And it was quite funny how all the paths match, because when I spoke to him the other day, and I mentioned Woody and you, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I did that show." And something I was going to ask: how much involvement do you have now in terms of setting it up? Is it just a case of plugging it in, turning on Ableton, or is there anything you ever have to? Does anything ever go wrong in terms of playback?
I'm not running Ableton. We have a playback tech on Bastille who runs Ableton. I think he's got 6 laptops set up side of stage, with the drum rack in one of them, the keys rack, and then the playback. And that world is not anything I know anything about, really. There's except the limited knowledge of what the drums are doing when they get to Ableton. So from my side of view, it's setting it up correctly. All the cables are the same every day. They're all labeled. Everything is plugged into the same holes across the stage from every department. And I have a way to make sure that when it's leaving my drum kit, it's making the right MIDI notes. We've got a test patch, and it labels, when I hit them, it labels what MIDI note it's doing and what it's supposed to be doing. And once it's done that, from my side, that's it. The rest of it is running off stage to Ableton, where he uses his own expertise to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. It has gone wrong in terms of cables do break. Obviously we have loads, so I've got a ton of cables around the drum kit, and then that goes into a box with miles of other cables running out across the stage. And then if something stops working, we've got to figure out, is it my end? Is it that end? Is it the software? Is it a pad broken? Is it a cable? Has something just come unplugged? Like there was one point where there was a riser wheel had been rolled over the main cable, taking all the information from me off to Ableton. So the drums went very, very quiet. So we had to figure that out and fix it quick smart.
Yeah, it's so wild, isn't it? Because it is, music's only going to keep going in that direction. And it does seem like there's always more things to go wrong. But I mean, when it goes right, because that kit is amazing. I remember helping set it up, and I was like, this is most pads I've ever seen,
Yeah, there's a lot to it. And I was very daunted by it at the beginning, because I'd never used electronics before. I mean, I'm old school. I just hit things with sticks, and then I'd tune the acoustic drums and make sure that they sounded right. So learning the SPDS, learning all that kind of thing, I had to learn quick smart on the job working for Bastille. And then I also don't like change. So when new things started coming in, which is why I went up to Joe's studio, actually, because I'd become very quickly out of my depth when we moved into Ableton world, and to the point where if stuff had gone wrong, I would have been useless. I still am relatively useless when stuff goes wrong. But they say that as roadies, as techs, we're not there for when it's going well. We're there for that one moment it goes wrong, and we can put it right.
Have there been what's the biggest moment it's gone wrong? Sorry, Ben's got a question. I can see he's ready. And I just say, what's the worst thing that's happened?
What's the worst thing that happened? So the time there was a song called Overjoy, which is solely on the SPDS. That was the day that the riser ran over the cable. So it wasn't even though he could just play the part on the acoustic drums, because he was nowhere near that. He was stood on an SPDS the other side of the stage, and it just didn't make any noise. One of my favorite stories is in the early days of working for Bastille, maybe it was in that first festival run, so I'd only been on the gig a month, and we were in Poland, and I didn't speak any Polish. None of us really did, and those guys didn't speak much of our English either. And one of the boom arms on one of the cymbal stands, the tiny little grub screw, it's a 2mm Allen key, was loose. So this boom arm was swinging around in the wind, and I didn't have an Allen key small enough, and none of my colleagues had any Allen key small enough. So I went to this Polish stage manager, and I explained in best I could what the issue was, and asked him if he had a tiny screw that's going to go in there. And he said, leave it with me. And he took it away. And then hours went by, and we were getting close to changeover time when I got to put all the stuff on the kit, and I couldn't find him, and I didn't know where my cymbal stand was. So I said to him, I eventually found him. I said, mate, we're going on stage. I need that cymbal stand back. Where have you taken it? He said, oh, don't worry, I'll go and find the bloke who's fixing it. Found the bloke who's fixing it, who walked up to me with a massive smile on his face, and he just sawn the cymbal stand in half. He just sawn the boom arm clean in half and gave it back to me in 2 pieces with a big grin. I was like, what have you done? Like, no one knew me well enough at the time. I wasn't ready to admit it. So the session guy had a cymbal stand. So I basically took his off him and bodged his one so I could make Woody's fine out of a good one. And then I gave him the broken one that I'd sort of mangled together. And I kept it quiet for years that happened. Eventually I let it on, but my gosh, that was a terrible moment for me.
Go on,
I was
Ben.
just thinking about like the evolution of, the live drums and all the electronics and stuff. And yeah, it's not something I've used, but it might be a pointless question or an obvious answer, but like what's driving that? Is it the band? And I'm not just talking about Bastille, but is it the band driving to replicate their studio productions more accurately, or is that coming from an audience demand that the audience demands more accurate replication?
Well, I think it'd be a bit of both, actually. Specifically, I mean, I hadn't thought about the audience demand thing until you just said it, but that makes a lot of sense, because subconsciously, the more it sounds like what they recognize, the more they're going to sort of enjoy it and recognize it. But with Bastille specifically, the main guy, Dan, is very keen that things sound like how he knows them to sound, right? So he doesn't want, got to let the dog out. I'm going to answer that question properly in a minute. Sorry, I'm back.
It's okay. The Beagle's welcome to join.
Yeah, he's going to probably choose something in a minute. So we were talking about, so Dan is very keen on production. He's very production minded. He's got very bespoke sounds, drum sounds that change throughout the song, and like all his keyboard noises, they're very, very thought out and specifically designed. So he wants that sound that he's created in the studio to be what the song sounds like. You know what I mean? So and that's really, really important to him. And he's very keen that everything that you hear on the record is played on stage, even to the point where if a vocal effect comes in for a couple of words, he'll want to be able to trigger that effect on stage and then trigger it off. He doesn't want doesn't want anything on track really that isn't, which is essentially why there's a fifth guy, the session guy, Charlie, who essentially his job is to make all those other noises that aren't being played by the 4 main instruments. So he's got up there, he's got a bass, a guitar, a keyboard, a drum, some percussion, and he's just this octopus of a musician playing everything at once. And he sings incredibly well too. So specifically with Dan and Bastille, it's very band driven. He wants all those noises to be exactly what he's spent his hours and hours and hours making those noises in the studio. He wants them live. But then in turn, that would definitely feed to the audience, because they're hearing from the PA the same thing they're getting from their speakers at home.
Yeah. And also, I guess it's the visual element. I mean, one of the main things I learned from Joe Clegg's course was about play as much as you can, because in the past, if I ran tracks for an artist, I just put it all on a SPD, everything, and then I'd be like, well, that's the track done, and then I'd play acoustic drums.
Yeah.
But something that I learned is if there's a sample, don't just leave it in the track. Get a pad, put it on a pad. Because then the audience, rather than it just coming out of the speakers and you haven't done anything, if they actually see you hit something, it's
exactly
visually better as well.
Yeah. And there's a couple of tracks that are electronic drum based. And where you're in the studio and you're pressing buttons and you're building a drum track with a laptop, you can quite easily forget the drummer's only got 4 limbs. And there's one track called 4 Walls that I remember Woody he'll use every single one of his pads during this song. It builds, and then there's just all manner of different percussion loops. And he makes it his mission to learn them exactly as they are on the record. And his independence on the kit and his use of the electronics within it is quite astounding sometimes. I mean, there are points when he's really called upon to just have more than 4 limbs. And it's crazy. It's really crazy. He's done a few clinics where he's talked through it, and it's very, very impressive.
Yeah, I think I remember him saying that on the podcast. He said it might have even been that song. It took him a few weeks, and it was said there isn't enough. If they added one more pad, that would just be
that was, I think that was the beginning of the evolution of we need more pads. We need that, because then we had more that we could run through the SPD, so we had to get a TM2 to run the extra pads, and then it became even more again, so we sacked that all off and got the TM6. But there was definitely a light bulb moment where Dan said, "Ooh, let's see what else I can make Woody play." And then Woody learned how to play it, so they just get going and going.
I've just bought a new snare drum,
and that's it. Right, moving on.
See you next week. And it's got it's a BDC Aviator,
right?
But I was just thinking in general, because it's got the stock head on, but I think it's quite a decent stock head. And but I was thinking about what skin maybe to put on it. But I was thinking then, chatting to you about, when you how often do you not just change skins, but maybe consider a completely different skin for the kit?
So for me, so with Bastille and with Woody, for a 90-minute headline show, I will change the tom heads every 4 shows and the snare head every 2 or 3. And the reason for that is because when I was playing myself, I was playing in tiny clubs. I remember specifically buying a beat up Pearl Export kit, and it didn't matter what was on it because you weren't getting any of that drums through the PA. And I just beat the hell out of it. And most of the noise you get from the PA in Southend Chinneries would be from my drum kit actually on stage anyway, right? You're just struggling to get the vocals and the guitars over the top of that. So it didn't matter what was on it. And I knew that I could make whatever was on it sound fine because of what you're going to be hearing from the front row, right? Moving on to the other extreme where we're playing the O2 Arena and I've got a gazillion pounds worth of equipment that my drums are going through, down to the mics and the desks and the PA and all this stuff that it's going through. I've got the opportunity to make them sound fucking great every day. So that's my goal. And knowing that they are going to be heard and how good they can sound, it's just my preference to actually take pride and actually want to make them sound as good as I can each time. So after about 4 or 5 shows of a 90-minute set, I'm noticing that I can't tune them exactly as I want to. And I'm being forced to tune them in a way because the head is tiring. So I've lost a load of slack. So they've got to go higher pitched ever so slightly. And then as that increases, I noticed that they don't sound so good through the PA. And then the front of house guy's thinking the drums that don't sound so good today. So he brings them down in the mix. And that all comes from, the drums not sounding so good. And that's my job. That's the only reason I'm there. Make the drums sound good, man. So No, I take a lot of pride in that. But what I do is when I take the drum heads off, for someone like me, 20 years ago, they're brand new heads. You know, they've got months of life left in them. So I will find someone in the local crew, and I will say, any of you guys, any drummers, and I will give them a full set of drum heads, which, you know, can last them a lot longer than I'd use them for.
Mm.
I remember once in America, one of the girls on the crew was collecting them all, and she sent them to a charity where they distribute them, and sent them home to her friends where they've all got bands and they distribute them out. So I make sure they don't go in the bin, because as far as I'm concerned, they're still pretty new.
Yeah.
That's nice.
When I mean, I think I kind of meant more if you were to change on the extreme brand of drum head.
Right. Yeah. See, now that is,
or even just a different model. Is there any point? Because I've been using Evans G2s for a while. Normally a HD dry on my snare, but at some point you want to change it up, and hear what something different sounds like. But it's a bit of not a gamble, but it's like buying new pants, isn't it? Once you try them on, you can't resell them. But what are there conversations with Woody or opinions?
Yeah, no, there are.
If we want to try something completely different on the shells.
Well,
how would you go about that?
For me, it's having the drums sound right for the music. So the different drum heads, the different makes and the different styles all sound different, and they'll accentuate different. Like, let's say we've got a birch kit, which traditionally is very clappy, very attacky, versus, let's say, a mahogany kit, which would be the other end. You might want to accentuate that attack by putting some clear heads on it, or you might want to dull that attack down by putting some coated heads on it, if you like. And if you've got a mahogany kit, which is warm and sort of the softer lower tones, you might find that if you put thick coated heads on that, actually it's just taken all the life out of it. So you might want to bring some attack in by put some clear heads on it, for example. So there's been, with Bastille, it's very drummer led. Woody likes his clear heads, and he won't let me use any moon gel. So I've got to make sure that they tune properly and they make the sound he wants. Now, there's been a drum kit he had. We used Natal for a while, and I found that it was harder for me to get the sound I wanted out of this drum kit with the clear heads that Woody likes. And the front of house guy was in agreement. It's like, it's not working. It's not doing what we want it to do. So I very gently persuaded Woody to let me put some Emperor coateds on it instead of Emperor clears. And in my opinion, that cleaned the sound up nicely. It added a lovely level of warmth and control that I wasn't getting before. But Woody didn't like it. It took all the attack away for him. So we moved to the suede heads, which was a bit of a middle ground. And again, I was happy with those, but Woody was just missing. When he hit the drum, it didn't do what he expected it to do. So we moved back to the clears and made the adjustments at front of house, if you like. But no, and then I work with a drummer who used the Evans G2s. Now, I'd never used Evans before because I've been a Remo guy, but I loved them. I thought they were great. But it can be a group decision in terms of drum tech, audio, production, but ultimately it falls down to what the drummer wants to do, really. At the start of a gig, someone might say to me, "What would you recommend?" And I'd take into all the account, what does the music sound like? What wood is your drums made out of? Are you a hard hitter, soft hitter? All those different things. And I'd make a suggestion. And, if the drummer liked it, we'd stick with it. But yeah, Woody had an idea of what he liked. So we're with that. I mean, that's absolutely fine.
Nice.
I'll put you on the spot. What would you recommend for 14 by 6.5 aluminium snare?
My go-to would be an Emperor coated.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I'd start. That said, if you're, how would you tune it? Do you tune it quite high, or do you tune it quite low and quite? What do you want out of it? You want a warm rattle, or do you want a big old crack?
More of a crack. Crack.
So Emperor coated and crank that top head. Okay. I worked with a band called Gang of Youths, and their drummer had like a big, deep 7.5 deep Ludwig snare. It was awesome. But he tuned it so low and put a the big fat snare drum on the top. And it took me a few attempts to get the drum head right. We went from Emperor coateds down to power stroke 3s and then the pinstripes. And it was eventually the pinstripe tuned well low that gave him the sound that he wanted. But that was one of those where he said, get me that sound. And I had to figure out how to get him that sound. Whereas Woody says, I want this. And then I make it sound like the best I can make
Right.
it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So what's just what skins are currently on Woody's kit?
So Woody is Emperor Clears around the toms, and he uses a CS coated, the CS dot, the Remo thing with the black.
Yeah.
Yeah. He uses one of them on the snare.
You said he doesn't want any moon gel. Does he not want any dampening
no
at all?
dampening whatsoever. No.
How do you find that to deal with?
Well, do you know what? It's a challenge sometimes. New heads definitely help. New drums definitely help because with moon gel, you can kind of, if it's not going well tuning wise, you can mask it and fix it with a bit of moon gel and it can change everything. But if he won't let me do that, I've got to tune it properly for one. But I remember one drum kit that we were using around America. It was custom made for Woody. And just as we were touring it, America specifically, in my experience, in America, the temperature can really have a huge effect on the drum kit. It sits in the truck for 24 hours, riding through the desert. When you get it out, it's red hot. And then, we could be doing gigs in minus temperatures, and the gear's been sat in the truck for 24 hours in minus temperatures, and you get it out and it's all of a sudden full of condensation. And my point on that was I was really noticing how that's affecting the drum kit staying in tune, or how easy it is to tune it. There's some drums I won't use in the heat. If it's a hot day, I'll bring the Ludwig out because I know it's metal, it's aluminium, it's trustworthy. Whereas these wooden drums have, they've moved. But there was one kit specifically that I actually sent back to the factory because I was just finding it harder and harder and harder to tune it. And it was taking hours, and it shouldn't take hours to tune these toms, and I couldn't work out what was happening, whether I was losing my mind or what. But it was a bold move from myself, actually. I was quite nervous about doing it. I rang the company and I said, look, I think the bearing edges are wrong. I think they're inconsistent. So I sent them back to the factory to fix it. And it turns out they agreed with me, which I'm really, really, really pleased with, because I didn't really fancy telling this company that made the drums badly. But they fixed it and they sent it back out to me, and it made the world of difference. So there's all of these different variables really that I've experienced over however long I've been doing this. But I could have masked all that with moon gel to bring it back to the original. But
that's
I
the point
wasn't
of all
allowed.
of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
All those problems. Moon gel could save the day.
Hang on, the Beagle's barking at some wheelie bins. Harvey, come and say hello. Harvey, come.
Hey.
Here he is. It's Harvey the Beagle. His little tie.
Look at that. That's adorable.
He hates the
Harvey
wheelie
dress.
bins for some reason. Why do you hate the wheelie bins so much? But he doesn't bark at my wheelie bin, which is interesting. Sorry, Harvey, lie down. Wake up. Sorry, Jags.
It's all right.
That's all right. Something I wanted to ask, speaking of how busy Bastile's been, we've been trying to get you on the show for a year and a half. And I did sort of message you in the summer, and we were going to arrange something. And I mean, I'll be blunt, you sort of said, I almost don't want to do it while I'm on tour. Yeah, I hope you don't mind me saying all this.
No,
just like, I hope you don't mind. Just like, you're like, I almost don't want to do it while I'm on tour, just because I don't know how I'll be feeling that day, to put it bluntly, And
Yes.
And I thought it was quite, I don't know, quite a personal message, but I quite liked it because it was real and true and all that. And I just wanted to ask, what are the downsides of touring? Because we all see the great moments, but
Yeah. So I think the reason I sent that message, I didn't want to do this on a day where I didn't want to just be a negative Nelly on having a bad day on the road. Now, you do get bad days on the road, if you imagine, I mean, first of all, I love my job. I'm lucky to have it. I travel the world. There are people that would do anything to do what I do, and all of that, and that's absolutely fine. But there definitely are downsides to it. You know, you've got it's not for everybody. I don't think. I was talking to the Duran Duran drum tech. We were just on tour with those guys, and we were laughing about some of the situations we find ourselves in. You're living in a bus with anywhere between 8 and 16 other people. There you're going out friends, your work friends, the first people you see in the morning, the last people you see at night, and you're away from your family, and you've got to know how to function in that world. You're seeing the same people 24 hours a day, effectively, and they're the people you spend your days off with as well. You don't see your family. You spend a lot of time in dark rooms with flashing lights and loud noises, and there are points when you don't feel like it. And the show must go on. It's relentless sometimes, and some of the scheduling is very, very tough. There are points where you'll fly from LA to Singapore for one show and spend 2 days there, and then fly home. The scheduling can be very brutal, and it can take its toll. I'm 41 now. I've been doing this for 10 years with Bastille, 9 years with them, and there are points when you just don't feel like it, and you're not having the greatest day. And then that can escalate and go further for some people. There's a fantastic charity called Music Support who are set up and designed to look after us roadies and musicians from, when mental health takes its toll when you're on the road and you're stuck miles and miles and miles from anywhere. A couple of my friends have used it. They've been fantastic. But yeah, there are some days when you're just very, very, very tired and exhausted and long-term tired, not just like going to be fixed with a good night's sleep tired. You're actually just knackered.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to catch you on one of those days where I just wanted to actually just be in bed all day and just moan about my work. I didn't want to do that. But no, there are definitely days when it's harder than others.
Is there anything you've learned in your time doing it that will, if you're having a down day, not that it'll fix it, but it can ease the day?
We've started doing a lot of exercise on the road over the last 2 or 3 years. There's a few of us that get together after sound check, and we do a workout or a HIIT workout, or one of the guys has got a set of gymnastic rings that he rigs up in the truck. He puts them there on day one and then takes them down the last day of the tour, and then they're hanging from a bar on the roof, so we will just do some stuff on those. I've found that with the group of the 12 of us, we're very intertwined now. We're very close-knit, and we all get on each other's nerves as much as we are there for each other, and that acknowledging that about yourself and about everybody else over time has just evolved, that we all have found various ways to give each other space as and when needed, or recognize that you might need space as much as I need space, and all of us doing that together is very helpful. But then there's also times when it all shifts. Like we will find hobbies. There's a couple of them in the Bastille crew that go and play golf on every day off, and there's a couple of them that like to go to the cinema or hunt out decent coffee shops. You find your little thing that you like to do, and you just make sure you do it. And then sometimes you just got to be boring. Sometimes you just got to go to bed, get some sleep. It's not, you're there for a job. You're there to make sure everything works as efficiently as possible. That includes all the humans involved as well. Take your rest. Find something you enjoy doing. Like most days off, to be honest with you, no one sees me. I hide. I do my own thing. I go for long walks, solo pub crawls, whatever I like to do to sit. I like to sit in a room, a busy room, on my own, quietly, let the whole world just buzz around me, and I can just sit there still. I just love it. But some people find that really weird. You go and sit in a busy restaurant by yourself and have some dinner on your own. I love it. It's my peace. But there are other people that just like to be outside. I like to take my camera and go and find a hill and walk up it. There was once in Oregon, I could see this mountain out of my hotel room, and I just thought, I'd much rather be over there than I am sat here. And then I thought, actually, I can be over there. So I just I walked to it. There's one, you know, get an Uber to the bottom of the hill and just walk up there, get some space from people and everything else. And the main thing is get outside in the daytime, because you're stuck in this venue. A lot of the time it's very claustrophobic. A lot of the time there's nowhere to be, or to, do you know what I mean, to spend the day, or there's no room for you, or you're either going to be sat on the floor, there's not enough chairs, or one thing or another. But if you get outside, it just changes the day, especially if the sun's out.
Well, I imagine it would be very easy to not go outside all day. You know, if the bus pulls into the venue and you set up and then have a shower and a nap on the bus and then pack down. And, yeah. And then especially for a stage manager, he's 16 hours in that venue, and he won't get outside. Yeah. On those days when, you know, I'm just going to a pharmacy to get some fresh toothpaste, in the 3 hours you've got off, he won't be able to do that. Yeah.
So, you know, it's very, very important. Sometimes, he forgets to eat, you know, because you're very busy, very, very busy. And you've got to make sure you eat right as well, because if you imagine, let's say, a month on the road, and this has happened as well, you're in America, and you're going through the venues, and they're providing your 3 meals a day. More often than not, they're like, oh, the English guys are coming, let's give them some donuts. They'll like that for breakfast, which you do like that for breakfast. Everyone loves a donut. Yeah. But then if they all think the same thing, you've got 7 days of donuts for breakfast. You got to make sure that you don't do that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it can be really hard. And if you're eating badly, you're sleeping badly. If you're sleeping badly, you're drinking more. If you're drinking more, you feel horrible the next morning. So you go and eat badly. And then very, very easy to get into that cycle of not looking after yourself. And that just makes it even harder to be on the road, because you just don't have the energy for it anymore, because you're treating yourself like crap. So it's very easy for that to happen, and harder to look after yourself than it is to not look after yourself, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's very easy to fall into that pattern.
Okay, Ollie, who's your favourite delivery company?
My favourite delivery company is UPS.
There you go.
And the reason for that...
That was a confident, quick answer.
Yeah.
Once I was expecting a parcel, and it was delayed, and I didn't know who was sending it, so I didn't know who to chase. So I rang my wife at home. Her name's Jade. She's lovely. She's from Bristol. And I said to her, what's the delivery company? Who's it coming with? And she goes, let me look. Yeah, it's Ups. I said, it's what? Yeah, it says it's Ups. So that's the reason for the answer to that question.
I love it.
There we go.
I was telling Ben the other day, I was on a drive with my girlfriend, and we were on the motorway. We see a sign, and it says, I can't remember where we're going. I think we're going Cambridge, and it said Cambridge 15M. And she went, oh, great, 15 minutes away. I went, no. It's not 15 minutes, 15 miles. And then we did the maths, and it was like, oh, it is actually about 15 minutes.
Similar, yeah, that's right.
He was like, I was right. I was like, yeah, you were again.
What's the next thing in your diary with Bastille?
The next trip is on the 31st of October. We're going to Dubai for one show, and then we're going to India for 2 festivals in Bangalore and Mumbai. And then I come home, and a few of them are going to Singapore to do, I think it's like, they've just done Strictly Come Dancing here, or they might be in a couple of days. I'm not involved with that one, because it's the orchestral version of Pompeii that they've done with Hans Zimmer, which is really cool. They asked Dan to write the soundtrack for Planet Earth 3. So, which is what he's been doing on the road, and it's epic. It's so good. Some of the trailers are out now, and Hans Zimmer has reorchestrated Pompeii for the end credits. So it's insane. Like, Dan's so happy, and deservedly so. But they're going on to perform that on a couple of shows, one of which is in Singapore.
Awesome. Yeah. And where can people find you?
Me? Yeah. My Instagram is Ollie's Eco. Some of my photos are on there. I have a website, ojmiddletonphotography.co.uk. And there was one other thing I was about to say, and I have forgotten what it was. Yeah, never mind. It'll come to me as soon as this ends. I'm sure.
Yeah. Text me. It's okay. Right. Well, thanks for doing this. I was
Yeah,
saying
you're
to
welcome.
Ben,
Thanks
it's
for your
quite
time.
funny.
Thanks for having me.
Well, it's all right. When I first asked you, I think we've been doing the podcast for like a few months,
Right.
and now we're at the 2-year mark. So it's been
That's amazing.
It's more like I'm glad we finally got you on. It's like,
Well, all I've done is made a really strong coffee and just talked for hours. So hopefully it would make sense.
great.
Out of it.
yeah, and showed us your dog, which was,
Oh yeah, Harvey, here he
we've
is.
never had that on a show.
Oh well, Harvey's David.
Nice one.
That's great. Thanks so much, Ollie.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to go and do some long division.
Oh yeah, have fun with that.
Yeah.
All right,
Nice
cheers,
one.
mate. Thanks
Thank
very much.
you.
See ya.
Bye.
All the
Bye-bye.
best. Cheers.
There we go.
There we go. That was our chat with drum tech extraordinaire Ollie.
And his beagle, Harvey,
And yeah,
who joined
that
us.
was sweet.
That was very
Yeah.
sweet. Yeah.
You a dog
Sweet.
person? Or a
No,
cat
I'm
person?
not. But
You
I
either?
love animals.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? I don't wish ill harm on dogs.
Right.
I don't want one.
Got ya.
But animals are great.
Yeah.
They're just great.
That makes sense.
So,
Makes sense.
They're
I hear
just
that. You're quite
lovely.
neutral.
you know.
Well, anyway, learned a lot there. I think what was interesting is his experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a lot of the stuff he was saying, you know, he's learnt that from being in a hot Texas van and getting his drum kit out and being like, this is warped, or, you know, anything else he says.
This is
It's like,
fucked.
this is
Yeah.
fucked. Send this back, you know. Your kit's shit, mate. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of stuff. It was just, you can tell he's been a drum tech and a busy one for a massive band for 9 years, because a lot of the stuff, even just down to skins, knowing which skins to use. And what's funny, I hope you don't mind me saying this, is even before we did the pod, we were messaging and he sort of said, I hope it doesn't show how little I know about drums, something like that. Like it was quite, what's the phrase that we've used before on this pod?
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
Self-deprecating. Yeah.
Yes, and I sort of said, well, who are we to have a pod? I said, we feel the same, It turns out he obviously knows a lot about drums because he's been the drum tech for 9
and so
years.
much of that knowledge and so much of my knowledge of drums and knowledge of, recording and studio has just come from doing it.
Yeah.
It just
keep
comes from doing it, I just think it's don't know if fascinating is the word, interesting, but I don't know how to phrase this correctly,
Clearly.
George.
Clearly.
But it's, I guess, what a bizarre life. It is. It's incredibly weird. It's just a weird, great.
Yeah.
Obviously has its ups and downs, but the fact that, in a way, that's a job is quite bizarre. Do you know what I mean?
No. What do you mean?
Like, I saw a thing that on Reddit that there's this really, really, really tall tower, this big wire tower, right?
Yeah.
And a guy gets paid $20,000 each time to twice a year go and change the light bulb at the top.
Yeah.
That's a job.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you go round, you go through life and you do all these things. You use shops, you use public transport, you use all these things. And, like, you just take for granted all the people and things that make these things happen.
Yeah.
So, like, you get the ferry to the Isle of Wight, something you've done a lot, so we've both done a lot to do gigs. And, like, that's someone's job to not just drive the ferry, but the staff to get the cars on and off.
And it's not just that.
Supplying with things and
It's
fueling
the
and
attention to detail as well with, like, everything he was saying. And I love that job in terms of, I mean, it was, when I did the crew job, it was horrible hours and it was just manual labor for, 5 hours, 10-hour break, 5 more hours. But what I found fascinating was the fact that it started at 6 a.m. and it was constant work up until showtime.
And that's what I mean. People will just go to the show.
Yeah,
and watch
and they
the
just
band
turn up
and go home.
Yeah. So then when
And
he was talking about all the things, you know, down to the drum skin and, you know, Dan's vocals and this little bit as well, I thought that was
and
interesting
getting that
as well.
pad trigger note on that MIDI note so that it does this drum sound.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's this complete hive of stuff that goes on. And, you know, it's like a lot of things. I'm sure if you peek behind the curtain of, you know, filming TV or filming a movie, or like, I mean, you see the credits at the end of a film. Like 1,000 people have made that happen.
Yeah.
But also just you fly to Singapore for a day and then come home. You know what I mean? Or like, it's not a normal existence.
No, it's definitely not normal.
But it's crazy, really. But that's what I mean, I think, and that's what fascinates us as not just drummers, but it is finding out more about these things.
Yeah.
And then passing that on to other people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay, this is
sort
what
of like Jesus,
definitely
but better.
Like
no, it's true.
Do you know what's better than Jesus?
Go on.
Two Jesuses.
2 Jesuses. Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. But yeah, no, it's true. It's a mad job, and
I think as well, people might only consider the highs.
Yeah,
and not
of course they
consider
do.
the lows.
I mean,
you know?
Instagram's mad. You know, you only show the good stuff. You know, you never show, oh, I've had an awful day. I've just been sat on the bus. You know, and so that was my favourite bit, was just him talking about that, because I don't know, maybe some people don't want to share that it's not always great. And I think everyone we've spoken to has, you know, said there are times where, you know, Jack Geary said it, is when we were talking about Instagram. I can't remember if it was on the show, but he said it's all smoke and mirrors, a lot of it. You know, it's like it's a lot of time where you're not playing Wembley Stadium. You know.
Yes. I you know, and I've spent all of my time not playing Wembley Stadium. You know, people will look at us sat on this, you know, these golden thrones that we call Drum and Drummer, and go, oh, they're amazing. These must be awesome live.
They must be so rich from this pod.
You know, and like, well, you don't see me sat at Pro Tools chopping out every and ah.
You don't see me in the dirty pubs of, you know, Hounslow trying to find guests. So, please rate us 5 stars if you've been listening.
Yes,
that's what we're trying to say.
Get in touch. Email, Instagram, X. Do we need to call it X now?
Yeah, X. But Twitter,
isn't it?
It's a bit like, there's a shop in Brighton, maybe the one 24-hour shop, and it was always called Easy Hours, and it's changed. It's been taken over by Budgeons, but no one calls it Budgeons. It's Easy Hours forever. And I'll know that I'm the next generation, and the new generation comes in when they go, oh, I'm going to Budgeons, and I'll be like, you know, you're so young.
Can I get a marathon? You mean a Snickers?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, for me, it will never be the Astoria in Portsmouth. It's always Root. But I know a few people who will always think it's not Root, it's Europa. So things like that. Time moves on.
Times change, you know. Move on, people. Keep up with the times.
What would we change the name of this to?
What? Why? First of all, why would we?
Why did they change Marathon? Why does anything
do you know
change?
what? I've been worried we might have to change the name if it gets bigger, because you know, there must be other drum and drummers that started and then
but where are they now?
Well, exactly. But
if I have to keep doing this every week until I'm dead to prove a point, I will.
Yeah.
Even if you go in a horrific...
I thought you were just going to end the episode there. That would have been perfect. Go on.
Even if you go in some sort of horrific... how would you go?
Acid accident.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, if I pull it...
That's weird. That's so weird. I've got a Blacksmith t-shirt hung up right here for sale. If anyone wants one, £15 plus postage. And just as you said acid...
Yep.
My eyes focused on the word acid.
There you go.
From Acid Attack.
If I died in acid, you keep it going, is what you're saying.
Yeah, just so that
cool.
the name, for principle.
Yeah. No, yeah,
Anyway.
I want you to.
Yeah.
You should just talk to yourself for half an hour and people will be worried you've gone mental.
I'll just run these episodes through an AI
Yeah.
and see what happens.
Yeah, that would be good.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
I will see you very soon.
Room 101 this episode. I didn't get to do
Room
any
101.
jokes about Room 101, but it is 101. But yeah.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Drum and Drummer. You can find us on Instagram at Drum and Drummer Podcast. And you can send us an email to drumanddrummerpod@gmail.com. Remember, just pick up the sticks and twat it.